It ran in the movie theaters in India for a week. And overnight, the Sena, which is a political party from Bombay, started trashing movie halls and saying that the film and what it portrayed was against Bharatiya Sanskriti, against the Indian culture. And, overnight, wherever it was playing, it started getting trashed. And the cry was that there are no lesbians in India. And this is, a thing of the evil West. But it was playing at Regal here in Connaught Place, and that night there was a vigil with candlelight. That was the first night that the movie was trashed. And as far as the eye could see, there were women with placards and young men. And the placards all said, "We are Indians and we are lesbians." And it was like, holy shit, this is cool.
Do you think the attitude to same-sex relationships has changed in much of India over 20 years, or are we more or less the same place? Maybe, Nandita, maybe you'd be
Yes, I think I'm an NRI, so suspect.
No, I think it definitely has changed. I remember when we released it in about 98, even the journalists from English dailies wouldn't use the word lesbian. They would say, "So what do you think of this kind of a relationship? How are those scenes where you kind of went intimate?" And they were so awkward in even talking about it. And in fact, there is a dialogue that I say in the film that there is no word in our Indian language that can express what we feel for each other or something to that effect, right? And there isn't. So there was not even a vocabulary. And in all these years, it's definitely mainstreamed it. It has brought it into the public space. That has been its major contribution. And like Shabana just now said, that after all, what can a film do? A film can raise questions, trigger conversations. But there are few films where you can actually see a tangible change. And I think this film is one of those films where it's not just intangible. The fact that the Delhi court decided to repeal 377, such an archaic law, I'm sure the seeds of that have been in fire. Because there was no film if you don't have any representation, if you don't have a talking point, you don't have something which you can latch on to even start a conversation in a society that has double standards, that's full of its own hypocrisies, that has the fear of the unknown, as she said. So I think it was definitely a hugely landmark film, and that's why today we are talking about it, because it's relevant, because it contributed to the whole public dialogue around this subject.
And it wasn't just in India. I mean, what's really interesting was that BFI, the British Film Institute, last week, or a week before last, voted it one of the top 10 feminist films ever. So that makes you say, my God, So it did have an impact, even the way India was perceived by the rest of the world.
I saw it in London, and I remember the studio being completely packed at the Riverside Studios, and an absolute main screen, everyone pouring in. Shabana, 20 years on, how has the climate of censorship changed? For better, for worse?
Well, if you remember, just recently, I think 2 days ago, our very honorable chief of the Board of Film Certification has arbitrarily, without any consultation with his board members, has edited a kiss in a James Bond film from its length to half the length. So he has decided that 50 seconds is enough, but not 1 minute. Why? Don't ask. So in that, there was Cyrus Brocha, who's really quite mad. We were on a television debate last night. And he said, no, I have great objection to it, because this is the chief who's taken this. But there are 30 people in the board. So let all of them kiss each other and then decide what is the right length. That really treats it with the derision it deserves. But let us remember that, what was absolutely stunning about the Board of Film Certification at that time was that it was passed without a single cut. Then after that, it was pulled out of the theaters, and instead of the ministry taking a view on it, because the ultimate authority is that board, it re-referred it to the board and praised the board. They re-released it without a single cut. Yeah. So, that I do not believe can happen in today's society at all.
The censorship has got worse now, you're saying?
Understatement of the year.
Maybe you'd like to enlarge on that, Shabana.
No, but you know what's worrying me really, and as artists, I think this is the platform to say that this growing culture of intolerance is really cause for concern. For a long time, I said this is the fringe element, and it's the fringe element, and you need to put them down. And the media has a very interesting role to play, because I feel that any fringe group gets up, 10 people get up and say that this hurts my sentiments. If they were to be ignored, they wouldn't get the limelight that they do when they stand up. But they're not ignored. So now you are a defunct group of people who have done nothing in their life, and suddenly you have national television on your face. You feel really excited by it. And then again, another group of people say the same thing. I remember that when this fatwa was announced against A.R. Rahman and Majid Majidi, I said, who are these people? Just ignore them, because they had said the same thing about me, because I'd shaved my head for water. They said there should be a fatwa against me, because in Islam, women are not supposed to shave their head. Yeah. So Javed said, go fry an egg, and that was the end. Now, but it really, instead of making it into such a big issue, just ignore it. Don't fuel the controversy.
How will you get the TRP rating then? Unfortunately,
so I think that today it is not only about the fringe elements. It, I think, is coming from a thought that is mainstream, which is about not respecting dissension at all. And that is against the very spirit of democracy. Forget about in the arts, in any place. In a country like India, which is so pluralistic, I might not agree with what you say, and I have every right to say I do not agree. Do not resort to violence. See, intolerance will continue to exist in society as long as there are human beings, and has happened before and will happen afterwards. It is the state's business to deal with it. How will the state deal with it is the question which we need to ask.
But what about...
I expected taliyan.
What about self-censorship? Do you think... there haven't been many other movies that have, in a sense, pushed the envelope out in the way that you did 20 years ago. Do you think filmmakers are afraid of upsetting the Shiv Sena and creating a tamasha again? Or why has there been so few other fires, in a sense?
Well, we tried with water, and look what happened. And that
I
was
shaved my head for nothing, and she cut
Me
her
too.
Yeah, that was 4 years later, and that was a direct result when we were stopped of what happened with fire. It was like the demon that fire had unleashed in some people came up again. So
you had to shoot in Sri Lanka?
Yes, we had to shoot. We had to close
change cast.
We had to change the cast. Oh, I'm so sorry.
3 of us. Wow.
It was devastating, because we were prepared and we were about to shoot it, and that's absolutely the direct result of the legacy of fire.
Can I just add? I think it's a real pity that in our industry, and this is not to blame anybody, but in our industry that anybody doesn't, most people do not want to talk about things because they feel it might jeopardize their career, or they don't want to be political. Mm-hmm. Whereas Hollywood, they have the same stakes. And you saw what Kate Blanchett said when she won this award. And she said, my work is so insignificant compared to what's happening in the world. And, she talked about the Paris and Beirut bombing in the same breath, which was so commendable. But here, everyone's sort of not wanting to take a stand, wanting to play too safe. In fact, when I speak, they often say, in the film world, they think I'm an activist. In the activist world, they think I'm an actor. They said, you're an activist, so you can say what you want.
In a sense, Farak was, in a sense, a child of fire, isn't it? It takes on the same sort of issues. Not the same sort of issues, but it bravely takes on difficult issues.
And that's why people said that, when I did Fire, they said, how come you did such a bold film as your first film? Yeah, bold. But when you feel that there isn't even going to be a second film, you're not thinking this is my first film and it's going to be a bold film. And similarly with Farak, I did it because it really spoke to me. I wanted to talk about the issues that it dealt with. The Gujarat carnage had really deeply impacted me at a personal level. And that's why I didn't know. Now I'm working on my second film, but at that time I didn't know that this was a bold first film. So, for me, these are not careers. These are not professions. They still remain an interest.
I'd like to throw in now a clip from Deepa's Heaven on Earth. Have we got that?
तू बोलती नहीं नहीं तू गूंगी है क्या बोल
And it's 80 for India.
रॉकी वे रॉकी
माझी मैंने जान के थोड़ी
रॉकी देख है ने मैं धक्का देता तो वेलना लेके लत्ता पंद हुआ दिया तेरी वोटी है
Anything just marginally offline in length here is being severely punished. Very nicely hit.
बस कर रॉकी
You've explored violence throughout your movies. How does that intersect with the theme of women and violence against women in your career?
Well, being a woman has a lot to do with it, and but these are the choices I made starting with Fire. It was very important to me that I explore women in situations which might not be known or have been explored on film, whether it's domestic violence specifically for immigrant women who come to Canada in this case, where there is, domestic violence knows no boundaries, no class, no caste. It happens everywhere. But it's particularly difficult for immigrant women because they don't have a network and they really are alone. So to explore violence, to explore choices in Fire, to explore the impact of religion in water, to explore what Bapsi Sidhwa said was all wars are fought on women's bodies in earth, has been extremely important to me. Because I feel that I get to know much more about subjects that perhaps even subconsciously I'm uncomfortable with. And that's been the whole modus operandi, if you will say, of my work.
Do you think you've paid a price for taking on such difficult themes?
There's a lovely saying that it's the definition of critics that a friend of mine told me, who's a very well-known critic, and he said that critics are people who walk in after the battle is over and shoot the wounded. And just I felt like a wounded many times. But, there's an amazing, I think that Obi said that, where there's hope, there's the will to live. And I found that there is that inner resilience. And that inner resilience has come from my mother, my daughter, my very few friends, my cousin, and women I really and truly admire, and some men too.
I'm the token guy here. Rajdeep and me. You two, do you think you've paid a price? I mean, you've both consistently taken difficult films and difficult subjects.
I guess so, but I think, often people ask you, they think courage is something that you have to work on, that you have to try and get. But I think if you have deep convictions about something, then the courage automatically comes. You're not sort of battling with it. There are no inner turmoils like, should I do this, should I not, am I doing too much? If you believe in something, you just do it because you almost don't know any other way. So I think it's fairly instinctive.
Shabana?
I don't court controversy, as is said about me quite often, because I think it doesn't help art. It might get the eyeballs, people might get interested, but people come with so much expectation and baggage of what they expect the film or the painting or the book to be, that it isn't seen in its purest form. So it's not something that I would go and quote, but when I come across something that I believe should be said, then I have been raised to believe that I should say it. And that's what makes me take up things, not because I'm courageous, not because I'm brave, not because I'm courting controversy, but I believe that I think art has the ability to create a climate of sensitivity in which it is possible for change to occur. And I think we can take a step towards that.
Ladies and gentlemen, please a big hand for Shabana, Nandita, and Deepa.